You hear okay?
Yeah.
Just coming across good? Excellent. So really, in just the first few minutes of this, I'm just going to take you through sort of how Jim and I ended up doing what we do. Jim does it for a living, I just do it for fun, but nevertheless it's been quite an interesting journey, which has been dictated by the advances in technology. So just as a quick one here, just put that on full display, Jim, please.
F5.
All that.
Next one to the right.
That one, that one.
That's it.
Well done. So I mean, there I am, sort of 6, 7 years old, and I'm playing about with little rubber-powered planes, and I remember building one of those and thinking I'd conquered the earth, because that flew out of the football field and went in the nearby housing estate, and that was really the beginning of everything as far as I was concerned. And of course the technology still, by modern standards, very backwards. So I have one of the ones on the left hand side there, a Champ control line one. Anybody have one of those in here? Control line aeroplanes? Great. Well, gentleman over there. Great fun, used to make lots of noise and get covered in oil and so on, hit the ground every 5 minutes. The one on the right hand side there is a Halo. I have one of those. Did a curb to me, put a camera on there, and I tried to put an Instamatic, one of the old 135 cameras on there, wingspan about this kind of size. Never really got it to do it, and you just used to throw them up in the air. With a bit of luck you'd get them back, but you usually end up having to run 2 or 3 miles and across creeks and all that kind of stuff to get it back. So very, very young times, and all free flight or on the end of pieces of string. This is a photograph of a box I've still got, which is a single channel device where you would press the button to send a signal and release the button to make something, or just to stop it happening. And on the right there's an actuator that was powered by rubber bands. So what you do is you press the button and the rudder would go click in one direction, release it, go click back to the neutral position, click it again and it goes in the right position. And that was how you controlled everything. The throttle, the aileron, well you wouldn't do the ailerons, but the elevator and the rudder. And they were incredibly unreliable. I had several goes at trying to fly them, lost every single one of those planes, either smashed into the ground or never seen again, and you'd have to rebuild the little electronic receiver on the right hand side there. But nevertheless, things were starting to happen, and happen quite fast. Suddenly, early 80s, I remember a model shop down the bottom of North Hill that started selling these things, and you would have, that's actually a 4-channel, but you'd have a 2-channel set of radio gear. That cost you months worth of pocket money. You were talking £200–300 even in those days. But the point was is you had proportional control of things. So the amount you moved the servo was the amount that the model moved, and that was the beginning of something really quite exciting. So various models built like that, most of them crashing in the ground. I'm talking from my own personal experience. So still no great success yet. Then I decided to get into helicopters because they're even harder to fly. So you can see where we're going. We're heading towards things like this, rotary wing aircraft. But up until that point in time, which would have been mid to late 80s, completely unheard of quads. So okay, you've got petrol-powered ones with men flying them, quads in 1956, I think. But you're talking about devices like this, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds, almost impossible to fly. Why are they so hard to fly? Because they haven't got any electronic stabilisation. And that's also what comes into these vehicles, is the electronics aboard stabilises them. They're inherently stable. It's difficult to make them crash, they're so stable. But we're still back in the dark ages where you're literally just flying them as if you were sat inside them. Along come electric aircraft. So up until now we've been talking about petrol ones, lots of oil, lots of noise, lots of danger associated with them, really difficult to start, very unreliable. Electric motors, they're great, clean, cheap and so on, but the batteries weren't up to it yet. So there we are with some NiCad batteries down the bottom there. Flight times of a minute, 2 minutes. It's just no good for flying things like the drones that we're about to talk about. So everything's there, everything's in place. You've got brushed motors rather than brushless, so they make lots of electrical interference. All your electronics on board, all of your telemetry, anything like that, is just going to get interfered with. But you start to see these cheap toys coming out on the right-hand side there, which are the counter-rotating blades. Now, they are inherently stable. Children can fly those. So there's a very early quad on the left-hand side there. That's a whole lot of fun to fly that one. I'm not sure I'd want to get in that one. I fly the paramotors, so I'm not frightened of flying, but I wouldn't want to fly that. Over on the right-hand side, you see a very early version of the type of quad that Jim and I were building. How many years ago, Jim?
5 or 6 years ago.
6, 7 years ago, yeah. So you buy all the components off the web because companies like DJI that are making these kind of monsters and things like the Mavic and so on, they weren't quite in the market yet. I'm sure they were working behind the scenes, but we were building our own. So in the centre there, I haven't got a pointer, but you can see in the centre of it, there's a flight controller. There's 4 separate motors on each corner, speed controllers, everything's built into it. And it has a degree of inherent stability. On the top there it's got a GPS unit, so it now knows where it is when it's outside, and it's capable of holding itself stable. Still flight times, relatively short, 4 or 5 minutes about that point in time.
Yep.
Whereas you're talking about, for something like this, 35, 40 minutes. And very long range as well. We need to be careful what we say about range, but it's perfectly capable of flying 2 to 3 kilometres away from you on first person view, which is against the law of course. But you could fly this way out of line of sight, which obviously our licence won't let us do. But that was the early ones, or the one on the right was one of the early ones. Now we see a quantum shift. So on the left-hand side there, and this to me is really where the game changed, and this is relatively recently. You've got lithium polymer batteries, so you've got energy density higher than anything that we've seen before. A small battery is very, very powerful indeed. You've got off-the-shelf flight controllers for cheap, £100, something like that. But over on the right-hand side there, you've got what we call outrunner motors, which are brushless motors, and they're very, very powerful. Smooth, reliable, no vibration and so on. The combination of those 3 together and industrious, like DJI and so on, suddenly make it possible to make these kind of things. So now we are, where are we, 3 years ago now? 4 years ago?
Yeah, probably 3, 4, yeah.
3, 4, you go into a shop and you can buy these. So the one at the top left there, Parrot Disco, I've got a couple of those. Absolutely great fun, completely autonomous. Go outside, press the button, throw them in the air, they take off. You've got a mission on an iPad or whatever, so you've got your waypoints, flies around the waypoints, it'll even come back in and land itself. Either in a circular orbit as it comes down, or as in a dead straight line. All of those things on there are capable of coming in on their own. Something like this. If something goes wrong, say the GPS lock is lost or something, that will return to home. So it'll come back to the point it took off from and land itself. And through the tablet you can have an automated takeoff, automated mission, automated photograph taking, and automated landing. Okay, they're not cheap, that's 1,500 because it's the infrared one.
Mm-hmm.
This one sees in the infrared band, so we can see heat with it, so we can see things under the ground, which is particularly important for you archaeologists. But nevertheless, that's quite a piece of kit. This monster here, the decapitator is our familiar name for it. Obviously has blades about this kind of size, carbon fibre. They're no toys. You put your finger in there, you're not going to have your finger anymore, it's just going to take it clean off. And obviously we can't show you this running in here, but this one here has a particularly powerful camera on it, beautiful camera, and it does that just before it takes off. So it will fold itself up to keep the camera underneath, and then when it gets in flight it comes down like that, and you've got a gimbal camera spinning around underneath. So a real beauty, but quite heavy. I prefer myself to fly these, but I'm not doing it like Jim is for a living, so it's just, for me it's just fun and a hobby really. Add into the mix now, so we're talking about cameras 20, 24 megapixels, we're talking about a new generation of cameras ultra high quality movie speeds of 30 frames a second, 60 frames a second. We're talking about quality that 5 years ago we couldn't even dream of. They're stabilised. So you've got this, you can see it's on gimbal. But what it does is it actually corrects for the fact the aircraft's moving. So the gimbal itself will keep the ground flat. If you vibrate it like that, the camera won't move. The lens will just point straight ahead, just like those gimbal stabilisers that they use for making feature films and so on now. So the quality of what you get is very good. But do we use video? Not much, do we? Just still images mainly. So what we tend to do is so there's an area of archaeology underneath that we're interested in. The drone takes off, we fly to a certain location and we follow a grid pattern. And over that grid pattern, the camera usually points straight down, and it will take a frame once every
2 or 3 seconds.
2 or 3 seconds?
Yep.
Yeah. So once every 2 or 3 seconds, we take a still as we march across. It's going on an autonomous mission, so we put the waypoints in, comes to the end, turns round, goes back up on the other track, and so on. And at the end of it, we have several hundred photographs, all of the same thing below us. We know it's the correct height, because these things fly at exactly the same height. So we can take those pictures and we can do some remarkable things with them, which we'll show you in a minute. Okay, so we've established that the aircraft have come on, the technology's moved on enough now so that we can do some useful stuff with it. I'm now going to talk a little bit about what that useful stuff is before Jim launches into some of the images and some of the models that we've generated from it. If you've got a load of still images, anyone ever stitched any images before? Ever tried that? Gentleman there has done stitching before. Anyone else? Tim? Jim? You might have done it before. So you've got a load of still images, right? If those still images don't overlap, there's nothing you can do with them. But if the still images overlap with one another, what you can do as a human being is you could lay them on the table, and I've done it myself many times, bring the other image in and just keep twisting it about a bit until it fits. And then, of course, you can run a modelling knife around it, join it up, and that's what people used to do in the olden times. So you would have stitched images. People would do panoramas, so they take the camera